Hey, what's up, everyone? Welcome to another episode of the Affiliate Marketing Unfiltered podcast. We're here today with Kristian and I. He's a brand protection consultant in the affiliate industry. We've known each other for about 6 years now, and the first time we actually met was on PI Live in October last year. So that was kind of funky that after 5.5 years, we finally met up. But Kristian and I have been chatting quite a lot over the years. We had calls, obviously, that's how it all started. And then over the course of the last year or 2 years, we started WhatsApping a lot, and a lot of topics came up. So before we get into why we're here, Kristian, can you quickly do an introduction and tell the people who you are and what you do, how you got here?
Yeah, of course. Also to add, what's really crazy is when we met in October, I totally forgot you worked at Dept.
Yeah, that's
and this whole thing was, of course, we spoke years ago, and so a bit more context on how I met Istvan. I totally forgot that I met him, but he was just a little boy when he started out at Dept, and now he's grown into the affiliate guy, as you can see. But yeah, I've been working in the industry for about 10 years. So I worked at Interactive Investor prior to AdPlease. So I used to deal with their display, programmatic, and affiliate, but I wasn't really on that side of understanding fraud and all this kind of stuff. I was just managing a very, very small program, which was a very small aspect of the business. There was hardly anything there and really nothing to actually do with that. I ended up following my love to Germany, which was back in 2018, I believe. And after a couple of months there, I met Dan, who is the CEO of AdPlease, and we had a very funny conversation. And then I got more into this topic. So that's kind of my route to actually starting at AdPlease. And if anyone doesn't know what we do, we're a paid search and affiliate marketing tool. So we protect brands online, everything from ad hijacking, brand bidding, monitoring resellers, shopping insights, the lot. So if there's an affiliate program that needs support in making sure that these affiliates aren't doing anything untoward, then we're out to help with that topic.
Okay,
if that makes sense.
Nice, quick and dirty. We'll add a link to the website in the description after the of this video. So the reason why we're here today is basically we've been going back and forth a lot about different topics. Most of the time we agree on things, and even when we disagree, we actually agree. It's just from a different perspective. We might kind of word it differently and look at it a little bit from slightly different angles. So it was very hard for us to actually define how are we going to do this podcast episode or what are we really going to talk about, because this topic is, insanely deep. I had a session, I think it was last week or the week before, I forgot off the top of my head, with Ronan about ad fraud, because he reached out and I wanted to do an episode, and I kind of touched on the basics of it, but we already spoke for more than an hour. So that just goes to show how deep this conversation is, and we didn't even get into details of all the things that we're going to discuss today as well. So Kristian, he sent over, I think it was about 15, 16 questions that would typically cover this topic. But then inside of those questions, you could even go deeper and create sub questions, and just it's insane. So we had to make a choice. So I think this is going to be about 2 or 3 episodes we're going to do over the next couple of weeks, months, and kind of get into the depth of this insanity that we see almost on a daily basis. So who's responsible? What are the things that are being done right now by the players in the industry? And how did we even get to this point where this is a prevalent topic and, billions are being lost?
You've just touched on that now, but I remember me and you had a little bit of tit-for-tat some months back, RE Networks.
Yeah.
We had a little bit a WhatsApp argument, a relationship situation where we kind of had different perspectives. And this kind of is what brought us here today, because we all come from different standpoints, depending on whether you're a network, whether you're an advertiser, whether you're working for a monitoring tool like myself. So I will obviously work in sales, and it's hard not to get so emotionally involved when you're trying to support a brand, because, we've got a couple of colleagues that work with me, excellent people. We don't actually see ourselves as salespeople, because ultimately, we're trying to actually solve a problem. That's for one. And we're not there just selling you double glazing windows when you might already have double glazing windows. for example. We're trying to actually provide you with an understanding of the topic, understand your needs, understand the gaps, because the topic is so deep. And actually, like when I started at Ad Police back in 2019, so this will be, I'll actually be, I think in a week's time, it'll be 6 years I've worked at Ad Police, April 1st, 2019. So it's actually 6 years that I'll be there. And literally a lot of this stuff goes over my head, even till today, because the evolving situation of affiliate fraud and also like sub-network tracking, sub-network fraud, how that varies between different networks, what that looks like. There's also massive changes going on in the industry at the moment with regards to server to server to make the redirects less abusive, I guess, so that when somebody clicks on, a link on Google, for example, on a branded ad, it takes them directly to the landing page of that brand and not go through like 5 or 6 or 7 different steps. So this is all something that's going on right now in the industry. And we're seeing this with a lot of networks at the moment. And this also then leads to actually issues in tracking these affiliate partners. And so why I'm here, I guess, is to try and give a wider educational point of view, because ultimately when I'm deemed as a salesperson. So obviously when somebody receives my email, all they're probably thinking is, this guy from Ad Police, blah, blah, is just trying to get money from me. And it took me a little bit of time to kind of like weed that into my mind. So when I'm actually speaking to someone, I don't get frustrated or agitated, because sometimes what happens is I get feedback from somebody, whether it's like a network, whether it's a brand, whether it's somebody else that we'll be speaking to with regards to these topics. And they'll come back with feedback like, oh yeah, we're already managing this, or our network deals with this, or yeah, we've got a monitoring tool that tracks this, or they might not even understand what ad hijacking is. So quite often when I speak to brands directly and I'm speaking to an affiliate manager and I ask them what ad hijacking is, I don't always get a clear answer. And that's totally fine, because it's not such an easy thing to understand, to say that, hold on a minute, somebody's created a replica of your ad. It looks like your own ad, it isn't. They're hijacking your traffic. They're obtaining sales. Go on, you're going to say something.
Yeah, what's hard to understand about that?
I get you. Maybe I'm being too nice, but I think the understanding is maybe you're coming from it from a point of view where you know what it is, but trying to explain this to somebody who's heard it for the first time, I don't think it can be that easy to really understand fully.
But you just
from me go. Of course I did. And there maybe were other reasons and facets around it. I think that affiliate managers are also stuck between a rock and a hard place, because ultimately they're focused in on bottom line. The company maybe is focused in on bottom line. Maybe it's so much not the affiliate manager. So then you've got this conundrum is, okay, they remove fraud and it destroys their affiliate revenue and they don't hit their targets.
Chris, this is the kind of stuff.
This is the thing. This is not making excuses for them, because I don't believe it's right, because ultimately it's about choice and doing the right thing. And I'm a big believer in like karma, in what goes around comes around. If you're doing something that is untoward and you are knowingly doing it, this is never going to serve you well in the future. This is never going to serve you well consciously, emotionally, physically. I think all of these like negative actions will breed negative outcomes. I always believe this fully. And this is not making excuses for affiliate managers, but it's maybe actually educating the wider paid search team, the wider marketing team on this topic. Because actually for like an affiliate manager then to go to a like head of paid media and so forth, and then try to explain this, why this is happening, can be very difficult. And this is what we see from when I'm selling to somebody. A lot of companies like, oh, we need to provide a business case and we need to do this. I had a call recently with somebody who you've actually spoken to, Ishvan, so I won't mention names. And he has to go back to the board to get sign off for budget. So they've assessed a few tools and they've chosen to go with us. And we now need to provide them with like a solid foundation on why they're choosing us, the USPs for us, like the reasoning behind it, and also kind of some educational point of view perspectives. Because ultimately when they're maybe trying to get budget sign off from a board member, to try and explain this affiliate industry topic, which if you just mentioned at the beginning, like you can go on for hours about it, and actually there's so much depth towards it and how these things work, the mechanisms of it, the details, what affiliates do to claim commissions, for example. Like there's just one side of it. There's so much to it. So then to try and explain that in condensed version to somebody who needs to sign a budget or has to understand why your revenue is dipped, I think there is a disparity there. I don't think it's so easy and clear to provide this information in like layman's terms or a sentence. It's very, very difficult to do that. And ultimately, when people are navigating time, like a CEO or a board member or somebody like this probably doesn't have time to go through like 5 or 6 pages worth of stuff. I'm not saying that they shouldn't do this, but it's very difficult to do that. And that's why the topic needs to be kind of a little bit more open and understood as well on a wider level. And it's about how we, like me and you and other people within the industry, can come together to actually do this. Because the affiliate fraud topic in theory, well, it's not even a theory, it's a little bit boring. Do you know what I mean? People don't want to hear about it, but like, do you know what I mean?
I don't know how it can be boring, to be honest. So the thing that triggered me from what you were saying is basically people looking at the bottom line and then either willingly accepting or turning a blind eye to it, or I don't know, just not knowing about the fraud happening. So how can you think about the bottom line and then be afraid that you lose fraudulent sales? Like that doesn't make absolutely any sense to me. So yes, I get it. So it's conflict of interest. This is also, in my opinion, so this is going back to what I said in the beginning, the responsibilities of ad fraud. So who's actually supposed to be handling this? In my opinion, it all starts with the brand. So the person that's managing the program, they have to be aware of this stuff. They should educate themselves on it. I don't think we're living in an age where people can expect things to be clean all the time. Like you should be at least somewhat aware of fraud happening, because we all know fraud happens all day, every day, everywhere. So why would it not happen in affiliate, right? So that's just the first standpoint where, I mean, everybody should just think about this and then educate themselves on the most common things of fraud. How would that look like, et cetera, et cetera. Then we get to the point of losing the revenue. So affiliate channel, which you said affiliate channel might lose the revenue, but actually the bottom line is not going to hurt, man, most of the times, because you're going to capture all that stuff yourself, right? So I'll give you a recent example, actually. So what you said about trying to explain to the board members or like to the owner of a company or something like this, that it can be a hard job. I don't think so. So in my opinion, it really isn't. So to me, you should just clearly show examples, so screenshots. You don't need 5, 6, 10 slides of information. All you need is one slide of this is how it looks like. So this is what other people are doing. This is the mechanics behind it. So this, for example, the case that I'm talking about, I've mentioned this in the other podcast. I've written a LinkedIn post about this as well. But basically, it's a guy who was, and this was just the most recent case where it was blatant, and the brand was afraid exactly of the same situation. The brand was afraid of losing the revenue. And they literally said that on the call. And they said, yeah, but...
it's a misconception.
Yeah, exactly. So, but they said, and it was about a couple of million euros of revenue, right? So this is not like 50,000 or $100 that you're going to lose. It's quite a significant number of revenue. And basically they said, we're afraid that we're going to lose this. And you prove that they're doing this. So like that this is not real revenue. So I did my research. I did my thing. Basically a couple of screenshots of how it looks like. I explained how it works when they bid on the brand. I showed them the URL where it was missing one letter, and to the consumer, it's not even evident. They will never ever realize that it's not the actual brand's URL, but because it is literally one letter was missing, and it was so inconspicuous that you just couldn't tell the difference, man, as just an average person. So they used the redirect. They literally didn't do anything in the chain from ads in Google to click to the website's landing, and they purely just redirected through Google with the affiliate tracking, and then they were claiming commission. So last year, if we look at it at the last 12 months before I did this analysis, it was 360 something K in revenue that they made, and it was almost 100% approval rate because it was like in the medicinal industry, so they can't really return products, and people really need that stuff anyway. So basically, they don't return the stuff. So the guy made 360K off of ad hijacking in its purest form, and the brand thought that they were making like legit money. So then I literally showed that them, and I went into their Google Ads interface, their own ads interface, looked at the same keywords, and I said, look, you guys are doing this for less than €2. per conversion with these keywords, and you're paying this guy 27 euros for conversions. Are you really sure you want to be doing that? So I showed them in a very simple way the pain of overpaying for something they could be generating themselves. So I told them, just invest more in your own search ads then.
What data was this from? Which analytics? What were you using?
Google Ads interface for the clients. Yes. By the way, the guy had like 48% impression share on the brand's keyword, and the brand itself was like on 37% impression share. So the affiliate was outbidding the brand, and he was making 15, 16 times more per conversion than the brand was paying in their own in-house stuff. So I literally just did a cost benefit analysis, and it was like super simple to do. So to me, it's really not that big of a deal, man. Just show what it looks like. That's why we have tools like yourself that we can actually make screenshots. We can show and hey, look, this is how it looks like. This is what they're doing. Here are the redirects that are happening through it. This is the affiliate in your program. We can see them in your Google Ads as well. And this is how much it's costing you versus how much you could have saved. So basically now they felt the pain and they realized, okay, so we can actually be doing this ourselves. And I told them, even if you increase your budgets and like, Google Ads, if you increase budgets, you might have to increase your CPAs too, because that's just how it works. And even if you pay 2-3 euros now, instead of it was 177, you're still going to be far, far cheaper with that rather than paying your affiliate that commission. Plus the guy didn't want to show the data from the ads interface. And he also said, it's very hard recently to do this kind of PPC media buying. So I'm not really doing it. And I said, how can that be? I've seen you in the last 7 days in the results. So obviously the guy's already not truthful. Plus he doesn't really want to share the details. Plus we see them in the Google Ads interface. Plus you can clearly see the difference in the cost structure, right? 177 versus 27. I mean, come on. So they understood. So in my opinion, it really shouldn't be that hard, but I guess you just have to know what to look for.
And I'll add to that as well. I had a conversation with somebody on Monday with regards to concerns that they have with removing a certain partner, which actually was, quote unquote, their biggest publisher that they work with. This publisher has like several domains that they work with, and it's attaining them the most sales. They've got like a comparison overview with like different vendors on there, which is obviously the competitors of the brand, and they're ranking them. And they were actually ranking like this particular brand at the top. But in some cases, actually, when you clicked onto the like main URL with actually not the ads placed on the brand term, it was actually ranking other competitors at number 1. So what they're doing is they're just basically, every time that there's a particular brand promotion, they'll promote that brand on the top, and they'll do that for every single other brand, depending on what they're searching for. So they're not actually driving any incremental revenue, really. They're just... I need to roll it back.
No, it's fine. It's fine. No, comparison sites, they work a little bit different, man. So it's a good point you're mentioning, but people's minds also work in a way. So we're doing this with the brand as well. We're not allowing brand bidding, by the way. We're doing it on generic terms. But we also realize that when they're bidding on those generic terms, it's for an insurance brand. They basically, they run the same type of campaign for all the brands that they're listing. So we're receiving traffic on generic terms, but it can also go to competitors. We understand this, but we don't want to lose that spot on this website. So I understand the perspective, so the logic, because people are when they go to a comparison site and they see, like, let's say the top 1, 2, or 3 results, they think, okay, so these must be the best. So this is just a mindset thing. They're obviously not going to go for number 6 or number 7. I mean, that hardly gets any traffic just from the results that I've seen also in the last couple of years. They hardly get results. You might still scrape up some clicks and stuff, but the biggest conversions happen on places 1, 2, and 3 in general. The funny thing is, conversion rates are actually, or they tend to be better on place 2 and 3 rather than place 1, because they might draw a lot of the attention and people click and then they're like, oh, wait, let me check the other ones as well. And then they still click there and they might convert on another one. So first position is not always the best, by the way. But what I'm just trying to say is that comparison sites is one of those unique affiliate types where it's like this, you're kind of playing off the psychology of a consumer. So it's not a coupon site because you're not listed, you're not compared to, right? So comparison sites, they list different USPs. So for example, like that insurance, what are the coverage rates? Or what kind of things are covered? So you instantly get an overview. Okay, so this is the cheapest one. This one has the best coverage. This one has, I don't know, other like the best customer service, whatever. And then basically you make a choice, right? So this is a different psychological effect. I would advise that brand not to allow the brand bidding. So what you said as well is correct. You are sending based on your brand's traffic you're sending traffic to your competitors. And that's an issue, in my opinion. So
then they're competing against their partners on the search engine.
That
So
too.
you're like, what we on Monday was the partner ad position 1, brand ad position 2.
there you go.
And then they're promoting the brand at the top with like discount offers or whatever. And then it clicks through to a comparison site where they're also showing other vendors. And now it's interesting that you mentioned that most people click on number 2 and 3. This is really good. I haven't gone so deep into that side of things, like what people actually navigate on the landing page with comparison sites, something I've never really thought of too much. But that's very interesting that potentially like they can be losing their, their customers that are searching for their brand to like a competitor. But I think what I wanted to try and make the point for before, and I totally lost my train of thought twice, so you probably like have a habit to edit this now, is just I think fear really manifests and dilutes their train of thought. Because I've forgotten, like if we want to like scroll it down all the way to like things like Star Wars and stuff like that, Yoda's like always like, fear turns to the dark side, fear leads to anger and all this kind of stuff. And I think when people are worried about the bottom line being damaged or the bottom line being affected, shall I say, and fear creeps in, especially when businesses are maybe struggling financially. Now, I've done a post some weeks back. My posts never get any traction, but I'm trying to improve on that. But I've been contacted by several brands in the last year, and I've contacted a very big brand last year who actually was struggling. And when you're spending so much money on SEO and SEM, and then you're getting affiliates totally destroying that, it can really, really harm bottom line and growth of the company. And I've had the same conversations with people this year as well. And so we're going to bring it back to the fear point now. Is like when also business is struggling, and they're worried about the business overall, and they're not understanding exactly like the metrics and like what's happening and where the traffic is coming from. If it's incremental, it's not incremental. Fear can really govern decision making, and not good decision making at the same time. Which is obviously like why having conversations like this I think is really, really useful, because it just kind of gives a very good overview of what to look out for and why.
But dude, when you have the fear factor playing, it doesn't make sense to keep doing the same thing over and over again, expecting different results. It's like that's the definition of insanity, right? So
it's to the person that we spoke to earlier this week. Like you can just pause their campaigns for a week and see if it affects revenue, and then you can make a decision whether the revenue's affected.
Well, a week might be a bit short term because you still have the cookies and stuff, the lifetime.
Maybe, yeah, but
yeah, we get the point. Yeah. So honestly, in my opinion, I don't think that should be an issue either. So the way I generally solve this is I show them a way how they can achieve the revenue otherwise. So you take a look at their program. So I'll take that case again where they removed one letter and basically just hijacked the out of the brand actually, and outbid them on every metric and just earning so much money for absolutely doing nothing. In that scenario, I showed them. So I looked in their affiliate network and I literally told them, you guys are missing almost every single affiliate. I know affiliates right now that we could turn this on with, and they will start generating revenue for you. And it's real revenue. It's not hijacked revenue. It's trusted partners that I know. I've spoken to them, even though you're in a bit more difficult industry, they can still pull it off. And look at the cost difference between your own ads and the affiliate cost that you're paying on this. So just invest more in your own things. That same money that you're spending on him now, capture that same traffic with your own things, because he's literally doing nothing. He's not comparing anything. He's not sending them to another landing page. He's not talking about your product. He's literally hijacking your traffic. So you'll lose nothing. So invest more in that. So me trying to win, let's say, business, right? I'm saying to them that they should invest more in Google Ads. Who the hell does that? So I'm not afraid to tell brands that, because I'm just being honest. And this is where I take away the fear factor. And then they realize that, okay, cool. So we actually need to activate more affiliates. We get it. So we remove this. We invest more in our own things. Then we have to activate all these types of affiliates. And then, magic starts happening. So in my opinion, you just literally need to tell them, well, what they're losing now and how much they would make more if they would invest it themselves, if the option is there. And most of the time, the option is there. Other than let's say, duplicate conversions, other than like multiple conversions from the same IP address, stuff like that. This kind of technology exists for quite some time. We're now only talking about brand bidding when it's not allowed, so it's program terms that are being breached. So that's not per se fraud, in my opinion, but it is unethical because they're breaching the terms of the program. Ad hijacking is 100% fraud. Then you have the advanced ad hijacking stuff, which is where they cloak through different redirects and things like that. We didn't really get into all that, but those are pure fraud things. And then in my opinion, also this circumventing the mechanisms that networks have, that happens as well. But I haven't seen solutions to that kind of stuff from networks. Vetting procedures, that's one of the things you asked me as well on WhatsApp and in the document that we started work.
Brand guidelines,
all this stuff like that. So there are program terms and conditions that you can create and write up. But in my opinion, based on experience from working with like 12 plus networks in the last year alone, I haven't really seen any enforcement from the affiliate network from this. So if somebody is listening and they have other information, please let us know, because I'm just going based off of what I saw in the last 12 months. So I can only speak of my own personal experience.
I have a different view. So we'll come on to that in a minute because I want to let you finish. But I have a different view. I agree and disagree at the same time.
Cool. But basically, affiliate networks don't really do this. So the thing is, we see plenty of fraudulent accounts all the time in the networks. I can mention a couple of recent examples. So Daisycom in Belgium and Attraction in France, they actually surprised me a little bit because they rejected fake, so fraudulent commissions. So cashback users, they were abusing the cashback platforms by placing thousands of euros of order values. And obviously they were fake because they were never being paid for. The affiliate network spotted that. So they have these algorithms on their side where they spot like suspiciously high order values, and they rejected them already before they ever had to be validated. We obviously would have not validated them because we go through a validation process, and we would have seen that they never were paid for, so we would never approve the commissions. But they did surprise me that they did that. So that was the first time I actually saw that happen in the last couple of years, which was pretty cool. And then, for example, a trade doubler, at least from West EU perspective, they have a new rule for sub-networks. And I think every single network should do this, is they create a document, which basically it's like other networks did, like Daisycom many years ago for email marketing affiliates. They basically let them sign a contract where if they would be in breach, they're fully responsible. They would get kicked out, things like that, because they didn't want to with GDPR, basically, right? Because GDPR became quite a thing in privacy protection, stuff like that. So that was for email publishers. Now, Trade Doubler is doing the same thing for sub-networks. So if they want to be allowed onto the network, so onto Trade Doubler, these guys have to provide certain data points in their parameters, which then will get sent to every single advertiser they work with. So that's like a requirement for them to be able to actually go live on the network. But if you ask me, that happens way too little. So this is, again, one of the first times that I've heard that this is actually happening. We have to always ask these guys ourselves. And by now, at this point, I told the team as well, I said, guys, just skip sub networks. The hassle is too much. They will never actually, 99% of them don't even respond because they know that they're going to be delivering coupon traffic that we don't want, that we don't allow. And they're not going to send you the referral URLs. And you can also fake those things pretty easily anyway. So it can't really fully be trusted anyway. And those sub IDs, stuff like that, it's all fun and games in theory. But in reality, you can easily fake that stuff. So unless you get real access to that sub network, they give you a login and you can actually verify this yourself. I would say don't even run sub networks until every single big network out there is doing the same thing that Trade Doubler is doing, which is creating those contracts for the sub networks to pass that data.
That part I agree with, but I guess the question I've got for you is, you're talking about network guidelines, and this was like one of the questions that, like, I sent you one of my 15 or 16 just with regards to kind of, network detection, compliance, like the ecosystem and everything else that I added in these notes that I shared with you. Is, if I'm going to ask you, when you onboard a network, like, I'm not going to mention a name because I don't want to be name dropping here. What have you seen in terms of, okay, what are the guidelines? What is actually being served by the network to stop fraud, and what is clear there?
Well, other than those more mechanical things, like I said, so the IP addresses, filtering, stuff like that. So basically more the mechanical type of things. Other than that, none.
You don't know.
Or I don't know, I'm not aware. Chris, we find ad hijackers before the network ever realizes that it's happening. How can that be?
There are reasons for this. There's some that I can't share because I don't think it's the place to do it, really, in terms of just like giving too much information on why this stuff happens. But obviously we at AdPlace, we work with quite a few networks, and you mentioned a few that we work with already. And that's not intentional, by the way, for people that are listening. You've just like spilled those off on your own. But different networks have different policies in place and for protection. So ultimately, like when I'm actually discussing this with a brand, my first question is what does your network cover for you? It's always one of my. It's not actually the first question. This is like the third question. So the first question actually is like, what is your understanding of ad hijacking? Like if I've done an ad hijacking outreach, for example, this is what I asked the brand. So this is why we're talking about like where does the responsibility flow? Where does responsibility happen? It's definitely with the brand, because ultimately, like, I can go to a doctor. My health doesn't rely on the doctor. It relies on me making sure that I am exercising, that I'm eating healthy, that I don't smoke, that I don't drink too much, etc. Having a healthy balance. It's up to me what I do with
I don't
my
agree
health.
with that
The
analogy.
program is exactly the same. You cannot be relying on an external person, individual, company to make sure that everything is foolproof. You have to take ownership of yourself. And once you do that, everything else will fall into place, because what you will be doing then is when you take ownership of yourself, you'll be asking the right questions. So after I go through like the ad hijacking questions, the brand bidding questions, like what they understand about the Google Ad Center or the ad library, all these questions which kind of like a bit more detailed information about like how ad hijacking happens and what their understanding is of, like ad hijacking can be live like at 1 minute in Tucson, Arizona on a mobile device on a local IP. This is how ad hijacking happens. And obviously if you're not scanning enough and you're not on the right device and on the right keyword at the right time, you're not going to find that ad hijack. And then what I do, and once I've explained these basic mechanisms, because there's a lot more to ad hijacking than just those factors, is I then ask what is covered by your network. And I honestly, so I've been working in AdPlace for nearly 6 years next week. I've spoken to one person in 6 years who's been able to give me a full-on answer, not and an actual answer. And I'm not talking about like all the companies that we work with, because there are people, that work with us who I've done panels with, who have like a really in-depth knowledge. They know everything. They know exactly what's covered. There are loads of people out there, but quite often I always hear, oh, no, we don't. Oh, our network covers it for us. But what do they cover for you? And then it's just like, they don't know this. So if they don't know this...
Yeah, but this is, Chris, this is the thing. So I agree with you on this 100%. I also disagree at the same time, because I do think it's the responsibility of the network that presents themselves as the place where all the magic happens. And they say, we have quality affiliates, we have account management, we have this, we have that. They should preemptively already kind of educate, especially so in our case, when we do RFPs with networks, the people that I'm in contact with from all these networks, they already know me, right? They know that we're good, that of
course they do.
So
they definitely know you.
So basically, we don't have these conversations because let's put it this way. They don't have to explain all these things to me, because they know, and I ask annoying questions sometimes, and they already know they can expect those questions, but they don't need to educate me on all these basics. But the brands that don't have experienced people launching a new program, I do think the network should give them a list, at least, of things. Hey, when you launch a program, this is what you should watch out for. This is what you should, and that's where I think at least the responsibility should lie with on the network's perspective.
It's ultimately bridging the gap between network and brand, and educating.
And especially if the network says we manage it for you.
Like this, it's definitely. And I know that a lot of networks, they have this in place. But sometimes these fundamental things are also missed. I'm not going to say that I don't read some of my emails sometimes, or maybe I should read more than I do. But sometimes, like, you can miss things. I'm not trying to make excuses here for like everyone out there, but I'm just saying that sometimes things are not so always clear from like point X to point Y, or point A to point B, whatever way you want to look at it. So I agree with that. I agree that there should be like a framework in place that is shared both ways. But the issue that you've got there is like, people change jobs all the time. So a lot of what I also know is like, I've spoken to brands previously where I'm like, okay, what's allowed here? What isn't? And maybe this has been like outside of affiliate. and this is more like an OTA or a reseller kind of like thing. And actually like, oh yeah, we've got these legacy agreements in place. I don't even know what the legacy agreement is, and maybe they've only been in their job like 3 months or 6 months, and they haven't looked at legacy agreements with like partner allowances, for example. And this can also this can happen. And it's not again, I'm not making excuses for people here, but I'm just trying to give a holistic overview that, fraud isn't just like the focus for like a business. There's like onboarding new affiliates. There is, content, email marketing. Like there is like so many facets to the job that you have to make sure you get right. And sometimes it's very hard to do everything 100% right all the time. From a personal experience, and this is just like removing kind of this topic of fraud away from a little bit, is I struggle with certain areas of my job. Mainly with organization. I'm with organization. I get like my CEO, my boss, every time I'm like handing something in, it's like a nightmare, right? This is just because of how I'm wired. I don't know if I'm on the spectrum or not, but I really struggle with really like simplistic things, but I can do really intricate things really well. But then like paying a bill or like organizing something really simple, I'm like, it's just like, it's a for me. So I'm not trying to make excuses for people here, but I just want to also point out that sometimes there are also like fundamental quote unquote flaws with people, that maybe these things can be missed for certain reasons. But I want to definitely claw back. The biggest thing that I agree with here is definitely the framework. What I call bridging the gap. It's like bridging the gap between like communication, education, like, and this is obviously why we're doing this as well. It's like bridging the gap between like what we're seeing from both angles, because I'm coming from a service provider point of view. You're coming from a slightly different, you're still a service provider, but you come from a totally different angle than what I do. And it's about bridging that gap between not just me and you, but between brand and network and publisher and brand, and it's how that can really interconnect. But sometimes it's not so easy because, as you mentioned right at the beginning, that this is such a complex topic and it's a complex industry. Maybe we overcomplicate it, and actually it's not that complex. It could be really simple.
That's my whole point, man. It is actually really simple, man. It's just, it shouldn't be this difficult. I don't understand what. Oh my God! But Chris, so just I guess to kind of write off of that is, I do agree. Bridging the gap, I do think so.
It's the human level that I'm trying to look at here. I'm not just looking at like metrics, analytics.
So the human level, I don't know, man. I think it's a mix of, but basically, I think brands should, when they dive into affiliates, don't blindly trust everything and everybody. Educate yourself first. Find out what it actually is before you really start launching it, so that you don't run into like unexpected surprises. From a network perspective, I think if you meet a brand that is not up to levels, help them with certain things. Tell them that this is happening. Tell them that this might slip through. Tell them, like, take some ownership in that so that they are prepared, so they don't then later say, hey, yeah, but I signed up with these guys, and in the last year, I've heard this several times, by the way, in the last couple of months, is, yeah, we signed up, and then basically so huge network. They sold to a B2B partner. They sold them, yeah, we have several 100,000 of affiliates available in our platform. They're using like maybe 10 or 20 of those for the program, which are like relevant for them. So the network is already overselling something, which shouldn't be the case. And then now the guys are unhappy and they will never sign with that network again. So prevent those situations, be a little bit honest about certain things. And that's how I think you can create that tandem between the two.
Transparency is key.
Yeah.
So like, I guess like when we're on this topic of like, I guess guidelines and structure and ownership. So are we saying here then that it's fully the brands?
No, let's put it at 50 brand and network. Now, affiliate has nothing to do with this, man. Affiliate just trying to make money. If they can get away with it, they'll do it. So I can't blame them. I mean, if the brand isn't paying attention, network doesn't care. Why would I care as an affiliate? I'll just do what I need to do to make money. So I can't really blame them. They're just there.
Are you talking about the affiliate or the affiliate manager?
No, affiliate, the actual publisher. So the
yeah, of course.
But the brand,
the money that people are making is just insane. I've questioned myself in the last like 5 years.
People aren't paying attention.
And then I'm just like, I have had like fleeting moments of like when I've like struggled to control my reactivity, right? And I contacted a brand, I think it was 2023, and I got so pissed off. Like I spoke to one of the new affiliate manager there. I explained everything. She gave me really huge details of commission payouts. She was like, oh, this publisher would be paying like 20K a month. I'm like, right, this is fraudulent. She's like, oh, really? And so I went through it. Then I spoke to the CEO. I sent the CEO some cases. And like, I think I must have, I think I sent him one case, and I tried to send him another. But like, I sent him one case, but it actually was their own ads. So it was a different. Oops. I really shot myself in the ear. Right, it was his own. It was the own ad, but this was schoolboy over me, because I don't think it was actually 2023. It must have been quite early on in my time at AdBleeze. But the thing is actually in the redirect, it had